The alarms had been screaming for 3 days straight. In the deep space monitoring station orbiting Neptune, technician Paul Miller watched his screens with growing horror. The readings made no sense at first, then made terrible sense all at once. Space itself was disappearing. The phenomenon had started at the galaxy's edge, a creeping wave of absolute nothing that consumed entire star systems without a trace. No debris, no radiation, no echo of what had been there moments before. Just empty void where billions of lives had existed. The scientists called it the Void Cascade, though that name felt too clean for something so utterly final. Mars vanished on a Tuesday. One moment it was there, red and familiar in the morning sky of Earth. The next moment, the orbital telescopes showed nothing but star-filled blackness where the planet should have been. No explosion, no collapse into a black hole. Simply gone as if it had never existed at all. The asteroid belt followed 6 hours later. Then Jupiter's outer moons began winking out like candles in a hurricane. Each disappearance sent waves of panic across Earth's communication networks. But there was nowhere to run. The cascade moved faster than any ship humanity had ever built. David. Reed had commanded the battleship Defiance for 8 years, but nothing in his training prepared him for shepherding 2 million refugees through space, while reality itself crumbled behind them. The evacuation fleet stretched for thousands of kilometers, a desperate stream of cargo haulers, passenger liners, and converted mining ships all racing toward humanity's last hope. The Kepler Sanctuary lay 3 weeks away at Maximum Burn, AE, cluster of habitable worlds that human colonists had settled decades ago. It was humanity's furthest outpost, their final refuge if Earth ever fell to war or disaster. None of them had imagined disaster would be the universe itself unraveling. Reed studied the tactical display in the Defiance's command center. The refugee ships were holding formation, but barely. Fuel was running low across the fleet, and some of the older vessels were showing stress fractures from the constant acceleration. Behind them, the Void Cascade had consumed Saturn and was reaching hungrily toward Earth itself. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony fleet," reported Communications Officer Lisa Park. Her voice carried the strain they all felt. 3 days without sleep, 3 days of watching their home system die piece by piece. The Hegemony controlled this region of space with absolute authority. 3 alien races had joined forces centuries ago to create the most powerful military alliance the galaxy had ever seen. The reptilian Karn provided the warriors, the ethereal veil offered their psychic abilities, and the machine intelligence called the Construct brought precision and logic to every battle. Together they had conquered or absorbed every other species they encountered, except humanity. Humans had been too far away, too small to bother with. Until now. "Put them through," Reed ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the scaled face of Supreme Commander Thane, the Karn leader whose fleet blocked the path to Kepler Sanctuary. Behind him, Reed could see the bridges of Veil and Construct vessels, their alien crews watching with cold interest. "Human fleet, you will halt your advance immediately," Thane's translator rendered his growling speech into flat, mechanical English. "You are not welcome in Hegemony space. Turn back or be destroyed." Reed stepped forward, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Commander Thane, I am Captain David Reed of Earth's evacuation fleet. Our home system is being consumed by a cosmic disaster. We have 2 million civilians aboard these ships, including children. We request safe passage to the Kepler colonies." Thane's yellow eyes narrowed. "Your species is a plague, human. Wherever you spread, chaos follows. War, rebellion, the breakdown of order. We have watched your expansion for decades. The galaxy is better without you. These are families, Commander. Mothers, fathers, children who have never harmed anyone. They're just trying to survive. Survival of the unworthy leads to future suffering." A veil voice whispered through the speakers, ethereal and cold. "Your extinction serves the greater harmony of all existence." The Construct representative spoke next, its artificial voice perfectly modulated. "Probability analysis indicates human integration into Hegemony space would result in a 73.6% chance of systematic rebellion within 50 years. Risk is unacceptable. Reed felt his heart sink, but he had to try. Then let me speak to your leaders in person. Send an ambassador, let us prove we can coexist peacefully. Thane considered this for a long moment. Very well, one ship may approach, one representative. They will speak for all humanity's crimes and justify your species' continued existence. Choose wisely, human. It will be your last chance. The transmission ended, leaving Reed staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew waited in tense silence. Behind them, through the viewports, they could see the distant flicker of Jupiter's destruction as the void cascade reached the gas giant. Ambassador Laura Stone volunteered immediately. She had spent 15 years in diplomatic service, negotiating trade agreements and territorial disputes across human space. If anyone could convince the hegemony to show mercy, it would be her. Reed watched her shuttle depart from the Defiance's bay, a tiny speck of metal and hope racing toward the massive hegemony fleet. The alien vessels were beautiful in their own, terrifying way. Karn ships looked like flying dragons, all curves and organic lines. Veilcraft seemed to phase in and out of visibility, more energy than matter. Construct vessels were perfect geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. The negotiation lasted 4 hours. Reed monitored the communications, listening to Stone's careful words as she explained humanity's situation. She spoke of their achievements, their art and music, their capacity for growth and change. She offered technological exchanges, cultural, programs, anything that might convince the aliens to show compassion. Thane listened in silence. When Stone finished her presentation, he made his judgment with the finality of a closing tomb. Your words are eloquent, human ambassador, but your species' history speaks louder. You have waged war against your own kind for millennia. You poison worlds and consume resources without thought for tomorrow. You are chaos given form. His next words fell like hammer blows. The hegemony's decision is final. Turn back or be destroyed. This conversation is ended. What happened next would haunt Reed for the rest of his life. Stone's shuttle exploded in a brief bright flash as Karn fighters vaporized it with plasma cannons. No warning, no chance to respond. Just the cold execution of humanity's last diplomatic hope. The message was clear. The hegemony would rather watch humanity die in the void cascade than allow a single human ship to pass their borders. 2 million refugees faced a choice between annihilation by alien weapons or consumption by cosmic entropy. Reed looked at his tactical display one more time. Earth had 12 hours left before the cascade reached it. The moon was already gone, simply erased from existence like a mistake being corrected. Soon, the blue world that had given birth to humanity would follow, and with it, the last chapter of human history, unless they chose to write their own ending. The research vessel Newton had been trailing the evacuation fleet like a faithful dog, its sensors recording every aspect of the void cascade's advance. Dr. Emma Cross hadn't slept since Mars disappeared, too consumed by the puzzle that could save or damn them all. Her laboratory looked like a hurricane had torn through it, with data tablets scattered across every surface and holographic displays showing impossible equations that seemed to mock the laws of physics. The breakthrough came at 3:47 a.m. ship's time. Emma was staring at quantum resonance patterns when the truth hit her like a physical blow. She stumbled backward from her workstation, knocking over a cup of cold coffee, her hands shaking as the full horror of her discovery sank in. The void cascade wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was the death scream of something ancient and vast, something that existed partially outside normal space-time. The entity called itself the Devourer, in the few fragments of psychic communication Emma had managed to decode. It had lived for billions of years, feeding on cosmic energy and dark matter, maintaining the fundamental structures that kept reality stable. Now it was dying, and its death throes were unmaking everything it had spent eons protecting. Each system consumed by the cascade wasn't being destroyed, but rather returned to the primordial void that existed before matter and energy learned to dance together. The Devourer's failing consciousness could no longer maintain the complex patterns. That allowed stars to burn and planets to orbit. Emma's hands flew across her keyboard, running calculations that made her stomach churn. There was a solution, theoretically. The Devourer could be stabilized, its dying patterns reinforced and sustained, but the cost was beyond imagining. It would require the voluntary sacrifice of an entire civilization's life force, their collective consciousness channeled through a massive psychic amplifier network. Every dream, every memory, every spark of creativity and love would need to be offered up to feed the cosmic entity's hunger. Not death exactly, but transformation into something that could sustain universal order. Meanwhile, in the command center of the Defiance, Captain Reed was planning what might be humanity's last military action. Ambassador Stone's execution had shattered any hope of peaceful passage, but Reed refused to let his species die without a fight. If the hegemony wanted to block their path, they would pay a price for that decision. "Tom, what's our tactical situation?" Reed asked his tactical officer, Tom Black, a grizzled veteran whose scars told the story of humanity's violent expansion across the stars. Black's weathered face was grim as he studied the displays. "We've got 47 combat-capable vessels, scattered throughout the refugee fleet. Most are corvettes and destroyers, with the Defiance as our only battleship. The hegemony has 200 warships, including 3 dreadnoughts." He paused, running a hand through his gray hair. "It's not good, sir. We're outgunned 20-1. "Numbers never tell the whole story," Reed replied. "What they don't have is desperation. We're fighting for the survival of our entire species. That has to count for something." The attack came at dawn, ship's time. Reed had positioned the civilian vessels behind a small asteroid cluster, while his warships swept around the hegemony's flank in a desperate gambit. The element of surprise lasted exactly 4 minutes before Karn's sensors detected the approaching human fleet. The battle was beautiful and terrible to behold. Human ships, outmatched and outgunned, fought with the fury of the condemned. They rammed hegemony cruisers when their weapons failed, used their own hulls as shields to protect refugee transports, and kept firing until their reactors overloaded and sent them spiraling into the void. Reed watched from the Defiance's bridge as the destroyer Courage exploded in a ball of plasma after taking 3 Veil energy blasts. 23 crew members died in that flash of light, 23 people who would never see their families again. But their sacrifice allowed 2 civilian transports to escape the hegemony's outer patrol line. "Sir, we've broken through their forward screen," Black reported, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "But we've lost 18 ships, including most of our heavy cruisers. The hegemony is regrouping for a counterattack." Reed nodded grimly. They had perhaps minutes before. The alien fleet crushed what remained of humanity's military might. But those minutes had bought them something precious, proof that humans could fight with honor even when facing extinction. On his personal screen, a priority message from Dr. Cross appeared. Reed almost ignored it, too focused on the tactical situation to deal with scientific reports, but something in Emma's recorded message made him pause and listen. "David, I've found something. The cascade. It's not what we thought. There's a way to stop it, but the cost..." Her voice broke slightly. "I'm sending you the full data package. You need to see this." Reed transferred the message to his private quarters and sealed the room. For 30 minutes, he read through Emma's research, his face growing paler with each page. When he finished, he sat in silence for a long time, staring at the implications of what she had discovered. The solution was elegant in its horror. Humanity could save the galaxy, could stop the void cascade and preserve billions of lives across hundreds of species. All they had to do was cease to exist. Reed called for an emergency meeting of the refugee fleet's surviving leadership. General Black, Dr. Cross via hologram, and the captains of 12 remaining civilian vessels gathered in the Defiance's conference room while outside, the hegemony fleet prepared for what would certainly be humanity's final battle. "Emma, explain your findings to everyone," Reed said quietly. Dr. Cross appeared as a flickering blue image, her exhaustion evident even through the holographic projection. "The entity causing the cascade is dying, but it can be saved. It needs a massive infusion of conscious energy, life force on a scale that only an entire civilization can provide. We would need to link every human mind through quantum resonance generators, then channel our collective consciousness into the entity's failing pattern matrix. General Black leaned forward, his soldier's instincts immediately grasping the implications. You're talking about killing everyone in the fleet. Not killing, Emma corrected. Transforming. Our physical forms would cease, but our consciousness would become part of something larger. We would become the foundation that holds reality together. Captain Morris of the transport ship New Hope spoke up, his voice hollow. And this would stop the cascade? Save the galaxy? Yes. The entity would be stabilized. Reality would reassert itself across the consumed regions. Every star system eaten by the void would return. Every life lost would be restored. Except us. We would be gone, but the universe would continue. The room fell silent except for the distant rumble of the ship's engines. Outside, the hegemony fleet was moving into attack formation, their weapons charging for humanity's final destruction. In a few hours, 2 million refugees would be dead anyway, killed by alien guns while the void cascade continued its inexorable march across the galaxy. Reed looked around the table at the faces of humanity's last leaders. These were people who had survived the collapse of Earth's government, the exodus from their dying world, and a running battle with the most powerful military force in known space. Now they faced a choice that would define what it meant to be human. We need to put this to a vote, Reed said finally. Fleet-wide referendum. Every person over the age of 12 gets a say. This is too big a decision for any committee to make. General Black's weathered face was skeptical. You really think people will vote for extinction? Even to save their enemies? Reed met his old friend's eyes. Tom, I think we're about to find out what humanity is really made of. The voting began immediately, broadcast across all 2 million refugees via quantum entanglement communication. In cargo holds and passenger compartments, in engine rooms and medical bays, humans faced the ultimate question: sacrifice themselves to save everyone else, or fight to the bitter end for their own survival. The results would determine not just humanity's fate, but their legacy among the stars. In the cramped quarters of the transport ship Dawn Runner, 12-year-old Tim Walsh sat cross-legged on his bunk, staring at the voting tablet in his small hands. Around him, 300 other refugees wrestled with the same impossible choice. His parents had tried to explain what the vote meant, but how do you tell a child that they might choose to stop existing? Tim understood more than the adults thought he did. He had seen Mars disappear from his bedroom window back on Earth. He had watched his grandmother cry when they learned that Aunt Sarah's colony ship had been consumed by the void cascade. He knew that the scary alien ships outside wanted to kill them all, and that the growing darkness behind them would eat everything in the galaxy if someone didn't stop it. The voting period lasted 6 hours, the longest 6 hours in human history. Across the refugee fleet, 2 million souls faced the ultimate test of character. In the medical bay of the liner Sanctuary, Dr. Maria Santos cast her vote between surgeries, her hands steady despite the weight of the decision. In the engine room of the freighter Last Chance, Chief Engineer Robert Kim voted while keeping one eye on the fusion reactors that kept them alive. The results came in ship by ship, family by family, person by person. Captain Reed watched the numbers climb on his command screen, each vote a window into the human heart. The early returns were split almost evenly, fear warring with sacrifice, survival instinct battling nobility. But as the hours passed, a clear pattern emerged. The children voted first and voted overwhelmingly for sacrifice. Somehow their young minds grasped something the adults struggled with, that being remembered as heroes was better than being forgotten as cowards. Tim Walsh cast his vote for sacrifice and then helped his little sister understand why they might never see another birthday. The artists and teachers followed the children's lead. They had spent their lives creating beauty and sharing knowledge, and they understood that some things were worth more than individual survival. The soldiers were split, trained to fight but also sworn to protect others. Many veterans scarred by years of conflict chose sacrifice as a final act of service. But it was the ordinary people who tipped the scales. shopkeepers and mechanics, clerks and farmers, the vast majority of humanity who just wanted to live quiet lives and raise their families. They looked at their children and saw a future that might not exist if they chose selfishly. They thought about the alien families on distant worlds who would die if the cascade continued, and slowly, painfully, they chose to let go of their own tomorrows to preserve everyone else's. The final tally appeared on Reed's screen at 14:27, ship's time. 1,468,000 votes for sacrifice, 532,000 for fighting to the end. 73% of humanity had chosen extinction to save their enemies. Reed stared at the numbers for a long time, feeling the weight of command like never before. These people had placed their faith in his leadership, and now he would lead them all to their deaths. But what deaths they would be. What a legacy they would leave written in the very structure of space-time itself. General Black, prepare the fleet for Dr. Cross's procedure, Reed ordered quietly, and send a message to all ships. Tell them I'm proud to die alongside the finest people in the galaxy. Meanwhile, in the command center of the Karn Dreadnought Blade of Conquest, Supreme Commander Thane was experiencing something unprecedented in his warrior culture: doubt. His communications officers had intercepted fragments of the human voting process, and what they learned shook the foundations of everything he believed about these stubborn primates. "You are certain of this intelligence?" Thane asked his aide, a younger Karn warrior whose scales had not yet darkened with age and battle. "Yes, Supreme Commander. The humans are preparing some kind of massive sacrifice ritual. Our analysts believe they intend to destroy their entire fleet to stop the cosmic phenomenon that consumes star systems." Thane's clawed hands gripped the arms of his command chair. In Karn culture, honor was the highest virtue, and death in service to others was the most honored death of all. But this transcended even their warrior code. No species in galactic history had ever chosen extinction to save their enemies. "Have you shared this intelligence with the Veil and Construct components?" Thane asked. His aide's voice was uncertain. The Veil commanders report unprecedented emotional disturbance among their psychic crews. They claim to sense something they call impossible nobility emanating from the human fleet. The construct vessels are running continuous probability analysis, but their AIs keep reporting that the human decision violates all logical models of self-interest. For the first time in his 40-year military career, Thane found his certainty wavering. The hegemony had always justified their conquests by pointing to the chaos that followed lesser species. But what chaos could come from beings willing to die for strangers? What disorder could spread from creatures who chose universal preservation over personal survival? Aboard the human fleet, Dr. Cross worked frantically to modify every available reactor and transmitter into components of the massive resonance field network. The mathematics were staggering. Each ship would need to position itself at exact coordinates, relative to the others, forming a three-dimensional pattern that spanned millions of cubic kilometers. Every human mind would link to the quantum resonance generators simultaneously, their collective consciousness focused through psychic amplifiers that would burn out from the strain. "How long do we have before the field needs to activate?" Reed asked during one of their brief planning meetings. Emma's hologram flickered with exhaustion. "The cascade is accelerating. It consumed Jupiter 2 hours ago, and Earth..." She paused, her voice breaking slightly. "Earth has maybe 6 hours left. The field needs to activate before the cascade reaches Sol's heliopause, or the gravitational disruption will scatter our formation. 6 hours to say goodbye to existence itself." Reed opened fleet-wide communications and spoke the words that would begin humanity's final chapter. "People of Earth, friends and family, brothers and sisters in this last voyage. In a few hours we will do something unprecedented in galactic history. We will choose the survival of others over our own. We will become something greater than ourselves, woven into the very fabric that holds reality together." Across the fleet, families gathered in common areas to share final moments. Parents held their children close, telling them how proud they were. Lovers exchanged vows that would last beyond the end of time. Friends reminisced about better days and promised to find each other in whatever came after. In the engine room of the transport New Dawn, engineer Lisa Park recorded a message for the universe. My name is Lisa Park. I was born on Earth in the ID's year 2361. I loved chocolate ice cream and old movies and the way stars looked through a telescope. I'm about to die so that other children on other worlds can grow up to love their own simple things. Remember us not for how we died, but for why we chose to. Similar messages filled the communication networks as 2 million humans prepared to transform from individuals into something larger. They sang songs, shared stories, and spoke words of love that would echo through quantum space long after their voices fell silent. Commander Thane made his decision with 1 hour remaining. Against the protests of his allies and the direct orders of the Hegemony High Council, he powered down his fleet's weapons and opened a channel to the human ships. Captain Reed of the human fleet, this is Supreme Commander Thane. I have been wrong about your species. What you do today surpasses every definition of honor my people have ever conceived. I am ordering my fleet to withdraw and allow you safe passage to any destination you choose. Reed's response was gentle, tinged with sadness for what might have been. Commander Thane, your offer honors both our species, but it comes too late. The Cascade will reach Earth in 43 minutes. There isn't time to change course now. But thank you for recognizing that we tried to be worthy of the stars. Thane watched from a safe distance as the human fleet spread across the solar system like seeds on the cosmic wind. Each ship took its assigned position with mathematical precision, 2 million souls preparing to become the foundation stone of universal order. In his warrior's heart, Thane felt something he had never experienced before. Humility in the face of courage that transcended his own. Around him, his crew wept openly, their scaled faces wet with tears for an enemy who had become more than friend. The final countdown began, and humanity prepared to teach the galaxy what sacrifice really meant. The quantum resonance generators hummed to life across 2,000 ships, their harmonic frequency creating a song that no human ear could hear but every human soul could feel. On the bridge of the Defiance, Captain Reed stood before the main viewport and watched Earth die. It happened slowly at first, then all at once. The blue marble that had cradled humanity for millennia began to fade at the edges, like a photograph left too long in sunlight. The continents became translucent, then transparent, then simply ceased to exist. Africa, Asia, the Americas, all, the places where humans had laughed and loved and dreamed, returned to the primordial void as if they had never been. Field generators are synchronized across the fleet, reported Dr. Cross from her station aboard the Newton. Her voice carried across the quantum communication network to every ship, every person preparing for transformation. All crews, prepare for consciousness transfer in 60 seconds. Reed activated the fleet-wide channel one final time. His words would be the last official communication of the human species, and he chose them carefully. My friends, we have lived as explorers and dreamers, as artists and warriors, as mothers and fathers and children reaching always for tomorrow. Today, we become something more. We become the guardians of all tomorrows, for all species, forever. N.D. The cargo bay of the transport Bright Hope, 8-year-old Anna Chen held her mother's hand and asked the question that had haunted humanity since they first looked up at the stars. Mama, are we alone? Her mother, Dr. Susan Chen, smiled through her tears. No, sweetheart, we never were and we never will be. When this is over, we'll be part of everything, connected to every star and planet and living thing in the galaxy. The consciousness transfer began with a sensation like falling upward into infinite space. Each human mind, linked through quantum resonance to every other, suddenly expanded beyond the boundaries of individual thought. Lisa Park's love for chocolate ice cream mingled with Tom Walsh's memories of teaching his son to fly a shuttle. A Martian miner's knowledge of asteroid composition flowed into a composer's understanding of harmonic structure. Dr. Cross felt the moment when 2 million separate streams of consciousness became one vast river of human experience. Every laugh, every tear, every moment of wonder and discovery, every act of kindness and courage, all of it flowing together into something that transcended the sum of its parts, the collective human soul. magnificent and terrible and beautiful beyond description. The void cascade reached Earth's orbit just as the field achieved full resonance. For a heartbeat, the cosmic disaster met humanity's sacrifice in a collision of unimaginable forces. The Devourer, that ancient entity whose death throes had been unmaking reality, suddenly found itself sustained by something it had never encountered, a species willingly offering their essence not for personal survival, but for the preservation of others. The dying cosmic being drank deeply from the river of human consciousness and for the first time in eons, felt something other than the agony of dissolution. It felt love, sacrifice, hope, the fierce joy of parents watching their children take first steps, the quiet satisfaction of artists completing their life's work, the brotherhood of soldiers who died protecting strangers. Through the quantum field network, every human experienced the moment of contact. They felt the Devourer's ancient loneliness, its billion years of solitary existence maintaining the fundamental forces that allowed matter and energy to coexist. They understood its terror at feeling those forces slip away, its desperate attempts to hold reality together even as its own essence unraveled. And in return, the humans offered not just their life force, but their humanity itself. The Devourer learned what it meant to love someone more than yourself, to create beauty for its own sake, to stand against impossible odds simply because it was right. For the first time since the universe began, the cosmic entity felt hope. The transformation was visible across the solar system, as a pulse of golden light that emanated from every human ship simultaneously. The refugees who had been preparing for death found themselves becoming something else entirely, their consciousness expanding beyond individual identity, while retaining every memory, every emotion, every quirk of personality that made them unique. Captain Reed felt his physical form dissolving but his awareness growing larger. He could sense his crew around him, their minds still distinct but connected in ways that human language could never describe. They were still themselves, but also part of something infinite and eternal. The Newton's Dr. Cross experienced the transition as a moment of perfect understanding. Every scientific mystery she had ever pondered suddenly made sense. From quantum mechanics to the nature of consciousness itself, she was no longer limited by the neural pathways of a single brain, but could think with the combined intellectual power of an entire civilization. Young Anna Chen discovered that death was not ending, but transformation. She could still feel her mother's love, but now she also felt the love of every human parent who had ever held a child, the vast network of care and protection that had guided humanity from its first steps on Earth to its final sacrifice among the stars. The void cascade fed by humanity's willing gift began to reverse its course. Systems that had been consumed returned to existence, their stars reigniting, their planets reforming exactly as they had been before the disaster began. Mars reappeared in its familiar orbit, red and solid and real. The asteroid belt resumed its ancient dance around the sun. Jupiter's moons took their places in the cosmic choreography as if they had never left. But the most profound change was in the fabric of space-time itself. Where once the universe had been held together by the Devourer's failing strength alone, now it was reinforced by something new, the woven essence of humanity's collective will. Every star that burned now burned a little brighter, sustained not just by nuclear fusion but by the memory of human children who had gazed up at them in wonder. The hegemony fleet, watching from their safe distance, witnessed something that would reshape their understanding of existence itself. The human ships, now empty of physical life, continued to hold their precise formation as if crewed by invisible hands. Golden light streamed between them in complex patterns that hurt to look at directly, reality itself being rewoven by minds that had chosen transcendence over survival. Supreme Commander Thane stood on his bridge with tears streaming down his scaled cheeks, experiencing an emotion his warrior culture had no name for. His psychic officers reported sensation they described as infinite sorrow, mixed with infinite joy. The universe itself, mourning humanity's passing while celebrating their gift. The process took 6 hours to complete. 6 hours during which the fundamental structure of reality was rebuilt from the ground up. When it ended, the void cascade had been reduced to nothing more than a whisper in quantum space, and the cosmic entity known as the Devourer had been transformed into something new, a guardian whose strength would never fail, because it was built from the willing sacrifice of beings who loved strangers more than themselves. The human ships still floated in their perfect formation, but they were no longer vessels carrying refugees from a dying world. They had become monuments, shrines to the species that chose extinction to save their enemies. And in the quantum foam that underlies all existence, if one listened carefully, one could hear them still. They were singing. 100 years after humanity's sacrifice, a small Karn child named Kellic sat in the memorial garden on New Harmony, the world that had once been scheduled for destruction by the void cascade. She listened with wide, golden eyes as her teacher, an elderly Vale named Whisper of Stars, told the story that every child in the galaxy learned before they could walk. Long ago, Whisper of Stars began, her ethereal voice carrying the weight of generations. There was a species called humans. They were small and soft, with no claws or psychic powers or perfect logic, but they had something else, something that made them the most important beings who ever lived. The diverse group of children gathered around her represented a dozen different species. Karn warriors' children sat beside delicate Vale younglings, while young construct AIs projected holographic avatars to participate in the lesson. The galaxy had changed much in the century since humanity's transformation, but every species made sure their children understood the debt they owed to the ones who chose to die for them. Kellic raised her small hand, scales glinting in the afternoon sunlight. Teacher, why did the humans save us? We were mean to them. We told them they couldn't come to our space, and some of our people killed their talking person. Whisper of Stars smiled with infinite sadness. That is the mystery of humanity, little one. They saved us precisely because we were their enemies. They believed that all life was precious, even the lives of those who hated them. The lesson was interrupted by a familiar shimmer in the air, a golden aurora that danced across the sky despite the clear weather. The children looked up in wonder at the phenomenon that had appeared on countless worlds throughout the galaxy. Scientists had tried for decades to explain the auroras, but the truth was simpler than their theories. They were echoes of humanity's sacrifice, visible reminders of the consciousness that now helped maintain the universe's stability. On the bridge of the memorial ship that had once been the Defiance, Supreme Commander Thane, now ancient and honored, made his daily pilgrimage. He was the last surviving member of the hegemony fleet that had witnessed humanity's transformation, and he had spent every day of the past century ensuring their story would never be forgotten. The Defiance had been preserved exactly as it was, in those final moments, its empty corridors and silent rooms serving as humanity's greatest monument. Thane walked slowly through the ship, his aged body supported by a walking stick carved from wood that had grown on Earth before its first disappearance. In the captain's quarters, he paused before a holographic display that showed Captain Reed's final message playing on eternal loop. We choose this not because we are saints, Reed's image said, but because we are human. We choose it because love is stronger than fear, because the future of strangers matters more than our own survival, because someone has to be willing to pay the price for tomorrow. Thane had heard those words thousands of times, but they still brought tears to his eyes. He had spent decades writing the definitive history of humanity's final days, interviewing every survivor who had witnessed their sacrifice, preserving every detail of their courage. The book, simply titled When They Chose Tomorrow, had become the most widely read text in galactic history. The old Karn warrior made his way to the observation deck where he performed his daily ritual. He opened a small wooden box containing soil from Earth, collected during a pilgrimage to the restored planet years ago. Each day, he scattered a pinch into space while speaking the names of the humans he had never met, but would never forget. David, Reed captain and leader, Emma Cross, scientist and visionary, Lisa Park, engineer and poet, Tim Walsh, 12 years old, who voted to save us all. The names went on and on. 2 million individuals who had become part of something eternal. Meanwhile, in the research stations orbiting Kepler Sanctuary, Scientists from 100 worlds studied the phenomenon that humanity had become. Dr. Zaxth, a brilliant construct AI, had devoted his entire processing capacity to understanding the quantum signatures that permeated the galaxy. His latest findings were revolutionary. The human consciousness field appears to be actively maintaining cosmic stability, he reported to the Galactic Science Council. Star formation rates have increased by 12%. Planetary systems are forming with greater regularity, and we've detected no cosmic-scale disasters anywhere in the observable universe. It's as if reality itself has been strengthened by their sacrifice. But the most profound changes weren't scientific. They were cultural. The hegemony had dissolved within a year of humanity's transformation, its member species unable to justify conquest in the face of such ultimate altruism. Instead, they had formed the Covenant of Guardians, dedicated to protecting and nurturing life wherever it emerged. Wars between species had become virtually extinct. How could civilizations fight when they knew that somewhere in the quantum foam, human consciousness was watching, waiting, hoping they would choose love over violence? Children across the galaxy were taught the human virtues: compassion for enemies, sacrifice for strangers, hope in the face of impossible odds. On the agricultural world of verdant plains, former Veil warrior monks tended gardens that fed refugee populations from across the galaxy. They called their order the Cultivators of Tomorrow, inspired by humanity's example to nurture life rather than destroy it. Their leader, an ancient Veil named Echo of Sorrow, had been present during the first contact with human refugees. She spent her days teaching young beings how to grow food and build communities. Every seed we plant, she told her students, we plant in honor of the humans who planted the seeds of our survival in the very structure of space-time itself. The artistic renaissance that followed humanity's sacrifice was unprecedented. Musicians composed symphonies that tried to capture the sound of 2 million voices singing in quantum harmony. Sculptors created monuments from materials that seemed to glow with inner light. Poets wrote verses in languages humanity had never heard, trying to express gratitude that transcended words. On Construct Prime, the central hub of artificial intelligence in the galaxy, AIs had developed something unprecedented: emotions. The logical perfection of machine consciousness had been touched by the echoes of human feeling, and artificial beings learned to experience love, hope, and sacrifice. They built virtual worlds where human consciousness could visit in dreams, spaces of perfect beauty where Captain Reed could walk with his crew through digital Earth gardens. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in the children. Across thousands of worlds and hundreds of species, a new generation was growing up with an intuitive understanding of sacrifice and love. They played games where the goal was to help others rather than defeat enemies. They shared their toys without being asked, helped their elders without expecting reward, and dreamed of futures where everyone would be safe and happy. The quantum auroras that danced across alien skies weren't random phenomena, but messages, scientists had finally realized. The patterns contained information, mathematical sequences that spelled out words in long-dead human languages. Children, with sensitive minds, could sometimes hear the whispers carried on stellar winds, fragments of lullabies and bedtime stories that human parents had sung to their children. Anna Chen's voice, somehow preserved in the cosmic background radiation, was heard by a young Karn girl on a distant world. Remember to be kind even to those who are mean to you. Remember that everyone is someone's baby, someone's precious child. Remember that love is the only thing that lasts forever. As night fell on New Harmony, Kelix the young Karn looked up at the stars with wonder. She could see the memorial formation in the distance, those 2,000 human ships still holding their positions in perfect geometric harmony. The golden light that flowed between them pulsed gently, like a slow heartbeat that kept time with the universe itself. "Teacher," she asked Whisper of Stars, "are the humans really gone?" The ancient Veil looked up at the eternal light show above them, listening to quantum songs that only her species could hear. In those frequencies, she could detect the echoes of human laughter, the whisper of their dreams, the eternal promise that love would endure long after the last star burned out. "No, little one," she said softly. "They're not gone. They're everywhere. In every sunset, in every child's smile, in every act of kindness between strangers. They gave up their forms but kept their hearts, gave up their bodies, but kept their love. And as long as there are beings like us to remember them, they will never truly die. The aurora pulsed brighter for a moment, as if responding to her words, and across the galaxy, other children on other worlds looked up at similar lights dancing across their skies. They were all connected now, all part of the great web of consciousness that humanity had helped weave into existence. In the quantum depths of space-time, 2 million human souls continued their eternal vigil. They had chosen tomorrow over today, strangers over themselves, love over fear. They had saved the galaxy by giving up their place in it, and their reward was to become something greater than they had ever imagined. They were the foundation upon which all future hopes would rest, the eternal guardians of life, love, and the infinite possibility of what beings could become when they chose to be better than their fears. Humanity had died as they lived, not for themselves, but for the tomorrow they would never see. And in that tomorrow, they lived forever.